Welcome to Change the Narrative. I'm your host, JD Fuller.
I'm Susie Younger,
an African-American licensed psychotherapist.
I'm also a licensed therapist.
We talk about the isms. We talk about the phobias, anything that marginalizes and oppresses.
As a white woman, I ask the questions white people are too afraid to ask.
Everything we are not and everything we are is because of fear. Through a mental health lens, Susie and I will have difficult conversations with celebrity guests, political activists, and everyone in between. Our mind will tell us whatever we want to believe, but the truth lives in the body, and that's where change occurs. Are you ready to change the narrative?
So that's an excellent perspective. I get it. I guess my concern is that what I hear a lot is I'm anti-racist, so I don't own racism. And I think that that sentiment is problematic because,
Agreed.
What I like to
Agreed.
say is, men can't give away patriarchy and you can't give away racism. You can be anti-racist, and the most anti-racist people understand that they own racism as a systemic issue in our country. So I guess that's where my mind goes, but I appreciate your perspective.
Well, can I say something on that real quick? Because I love that you brought that up, because honestly, that is truly what I want to do. And let me explain what I mean. And I hate myself for not having done more in this way, because that was my end game for a while now. Mm-hmm. Here's the reason, and it goes back to what I said earlier. The reason people say I'm anti-racist, I don't own racism, is because, let me be blatantly clear when I say this. I hate the word ally.
It's not a word. It's not a word. Let's get rid of it.
Yeah, I've hated it since it came out. As soon as I heard people saying it, I was like, oh God, here we go. I am the Nostradamus of white people. And I know exactly where this was going as soon as I heard the word.
Yes. People
wear that as the I am voting symbol. And they say, look, I'm an ally, so I'm not racist. Stop. White people just don't want to be called racist. That's why I use the word. That's all they want. And so if I get the title ally, well, I'm not fucking racist. I'm an ally. And that's bullshit. That's been the problem for the last 100 years of white people in being in this fight. And so what I really want to teach people is this. White people subconsciously and through the way we're taught and through everything, they see racism as a light switch. You're racist or you're not racist. And that is the spectrum through which white people view racism. The reason that you are having trouble understanding how an anti-racist can't own racism is because you understand racism is a spectrum.
Yeah.
Right? There are people burning crosses and riding on horses. Right. And then there's people that are just believing stereotypes, perpetuating stereotypes. And then there's people that are kind of in the middle, but they don't say yeah or no either way. So silence is compliance. And then there's people who will speak out until they feel uncomfortable about it. Then all of a sudden they're mad again. And then there's real people who understand what racism really is and how we feed it. But no matter where you are on the spectrum, you're on the spectrum. You're not off the spectrum. Yeah. That is what needs to be taught through and through, which is a big thing that critical race theory will bring to the table. Yes. But currently, as it stands, even people who call themselves allies, who are in this fight, listen, Great Britain's our ally. If we go to war tomorrow, they don't have to join us. That's why I hate the word ally, right? An ally joins when it's comfortable for them. So anyway, when they benefit from it. So these people that call themselves anti-racist, I told my wife, look, when we watched George Floyd get murdered on camera, okay, which, by the way, we can talk about this 22.5-year sentence. But when we watched George Floyd get murdered on camera, the next day across this country, Facebook and Instagram was filled up with white people who have never spoken on this issue before saying, I am anti-racist. And I told my wife, I said, listen to me, because I'm the Nostradamus of white people. I said, listen to me. I said, I want you to take note of everybody who's saying that, because I promise you, as sure as I'm sitting in this seat, in 2 to 3 weeks, their tune will change. I promise you. And it's exactly what happened. As soon as the first Target was burnt down, what did I hear? Well, I support Black Lives, but Target. Listen, if the only thing that is standing between you and actually fighting for Black lives is Target being burnt down, you were never on board. You were never there to begin with. And so, to your point, how can you be anti-racist? And it's because they don't know what the hell anti-racist means, because they're still on a light switch. If I have a black friend, light switch off, because racists hate all black people. So how could I be a racist and have a black friend? It's a light switch. We gotta educate America that it's not a light switch. Stop. It's a spectrum, and that's what white America doesn't get that. Literally, even those who are educated, even those who want to be in this fight, even those who are vocal, I'm telling you, they don't understand there's a spectrum.
Just before I throw it to Susie, I'm just going to add one point that I know that you're absolutely right about. I mean, I know you're right about everything that you are.
No, I'm definitely not right about everything.
Well, you're on our show, and we are about social justice, and so we are in line with your thinking. Let me not use right.
I like that.
We are in line with each other's belief system. One of the problems is that racism, white supremacy for people of color is felt. And for white people, it's thought about. And so a lot of that, I once had a student gave me one of the best lessons I've had, who said, it's just not that serious for us. A white student who said that. And that was just so powerful to me. That clicked into another level of of the trainings I offer, because if you don't have it in your body, then you don't have access to it every second of the day like a person of color does. Every day, that trauma reminds me that it's there. It doesn't go away. And if you get the opportunity to think about it, then yeah, it is going to be a light switch. But that switch is always on for people of color. It doesn't go anywhere.
Boom, exactly.
And that's the reality. So I appreciate what you're saying.
And to that point, right there, that goes back to what I said earlier. I will never know what it's like to be a Black person in America. So I don't want to know. This whole thing, and I've been saying this for years, way before TikTok existed and social media existed. I've been saying this for years. Quit with we need to quit trying to get white people to be empathetic. That is not possible. That is an impossible dream. And so by doing so, we're peddling the wrong message, and we're getting the response that's going to do that message, which is it's not working. Save your empathy and fix your cousins. Listen, I don't need to know what it's like to be Black in America. I just need to believe it exists.
Exactly.
That's it. If I just believe, listen, they believe God exists, and they'll fight toe and nail for that, and they've never seen God. So listen, just believe it exists. And when your Uncle Fred is a racist, say, hey, you're being racist. You're going to stop now. You're done. Get out of my house. No safe spaces for them. Now that's going to make real change. Because
I'm going to add one more thing.
I'm
going to add one more thing, because I think it dovetails nicely, which is the idea that, so as white people are thinking about racism, not racist, I don't want to be I don't want to be racist. I want to be anti-racist. What happens is when they do what you're talking about, which is call out Uncle Fred, it now taps into the feelings. Okay. Exactly. And that's the problem, is now they're feeling something. And the idea of feeling is uncomfortable. Like, I don't want to feel like this. I don't, and as a result of that, now we've entered into change territory where your belief systems really get tested. But if you exit left, you've lost the message. You missed the experience.
And plus, you know what? Listen, you know what really has changed? What has paved a big path for the LGBTQ community? It's parents not wanting to ostracize their children. Parents that said, you know what? If my child's gay, I'm cutting them off. And that does happen. And that's sad as hell. And I pisses me off. But there's a whole lot of parents who didn't do that. Because when it came time to pay the piper, when it came time to stand in the middle of the fire, they said, no, I can't do it. Okay, fine. I'm not cutting my child off. I love my child too much. So when you call Uncle Fred out, and if y'all really have a familial relationship and you really love each other, he might get pissed and leave 1 time, 2 times, 3 times. There's going to come a time where Fred's like, you know what? I would just rather have a relationship with, Samantha. So I'm going to listen to what she's saying. And that's where change happens. I
say it all the time. Change happens in relationship more than it does from the outside in. So I totally agree with that. Go ahead, Susie. I could talk forever to.
Oh my God. Well, and I want you to, and I can too. Jolly, I don't think you know this, but the way that I met JD was in graduate school, I guess 8 years ago, where she taught a class called Multicultural Mental Health, which is now changed. But I walked in as, this cis white woman of privilege, thinking there wasn't a racist bone in my body. and I met JD, and everything that you're saying, I just so appreciate. And, you know, I remember calling myself in my first class an ally, and right, JD called me on that 1, 2, 3, and I'm newer at it. And I know, like you said something about performative posting in one of your, something I listened to or we read, but I really appreciate everything that you're saying that is so felt. I can feel it in your body. And, you know, one thing JD taught me is that, again, I will never know what it feels like to be her. I will never know. And so I just appreciate all the words that you're saying. And on that, why do you think white people get so riled up when we say white people own racism in this country and are called colonizers?
Yeah, that's a good question. And it's one that really I could talk for hours on, because white people, the same people who got the Confederate flag in the front yard, want you to let the past go. It's this, there's the cognitive dissonance that we allow to continue. When you allow cognitive dissonance, that is the safe space. And the safe space is, I wasn't there, I didn't do it. And you're right. Here's let me make one point here, kind of about what you were saying in the beginning of what you were just now talking about. There's a lot of good points. Okay, so if we want to talk about Target being burned down, let's go back to the rioting and looting. Oh, you're right. Riots are bad. Burning down property is bad. I get it. You know, stealing things, looting, that's bad. But the problem is we're having these conversations in vacuums. In a vacuum, rioting is bad. Okay, fine. In a vacuum, looting is bad. So now let's leave this, you know, by proxy educational environment we've created to have this conversation and come back to reality and have a contextualization of why the riots are happening. Let's have a contextualization of why would there be looting in a community that has 22% poverty versus the 9% of poverty. Let's have a contextualized conversation. And so white people don't want to own it because we allow them to live comfortably in their cognitive dissonance, and they want to view it in a vacuum. In a vacuum, you're right, I didn't do it. In a vacuum, I wasn't there. But at the end of the day, it happened, and there is a cause and effect, and the effect is now. And so if I benefit from that and this person doesn't, that's not fair. I don't have to take responsibility for that. I don't have to feel guilty for that. I'm going to be, to any white listener listening to this right now, let me put this in terms that are non-ambiguous. And for Trump listeners, that means it's not vague. So let me be very clear. I don't feel guilty for slavery. I don't feel guilty for Jim Crow. I don't feel guilty at all. I have zero guilt in my body. Oh, well, wait a minute. Yes, because guess what? I wasn't there. I can't feel it. I don't know anything about it. I'm not trying to feel guilty or feel empathetic. I'm trying to find a solution because I recognize where we are now. And that is what people, that is where white America doesn't want to come to. White America thinks we're asking people to feel guilty. How can you weren't there? You can't feel guilty for something you wasn't present for. You can't feel how it's like to be Black in America. You can't feel these things. So stop with the feelings. Recognize what the system is. Recognize how it was made. Recognize the chain of events that went from there to here. Recognize what got us here, and then recognize how we stop it from continuing. That's all. Because now you are here. And if we allow it to continue, then your grandkids are going to be doing the same shit. And now you did do it, right? So we have to stop this disassociation. We have to start making it associate and not allow this disassociation to continue, right? Because I respect why we say, hey, colonizer. We have to stop giving credence to these dumb arguments. I wasn't there. Cool, nobody's talking about that. Yeah. Nobody's talking. I'm not asking you to apologize for what they did to Native Americans. Nobody's asking that. Nobody's asking you to apologize for what happened to Black America during slavery. Nobody's asking that. We're just asking you to recognize the results of it and how do we go forward fixing it? Because obviously that's not fair. Obviously, if 22% of Black America lives in poverty, if 9% of white America lives in poverty, that's a 2.4 times difference. That's clearly not fair. That didn't happen because Black America's lazy and Black America's this. You hear them say it's not color, it's culture. No, you just changed the word, dummy. Listen, if that exists, it exists because of a system created it, period. And if you don't do anything about that, well, you might not have done slavery, but you did it now. And that's why white America keeps saying we allow them to, and that we have to attack that association.
Okay, so you're using, and we super appreciate mental health terms. What do you think is happening to the collective mental health in this country based on exactly what you're saying and where we are right now?
It's a great question, actually. So something I talked about before, and I'm sure you guys have, and that's just the trauma in a community, right? So the Black community, and I say Black, people say all the time, what about this is true about other communities as well. You guys just understand that's my biggest exposure, and that was what I did for so many years. But marginalized communities experience trauma as a child because their parents have that trauma. Their parents have this unresolved trauma. You know, we're not sending everybody to counselors, so they have unresolved trauma that's going to get passed down. And then that unresolved trauma is learned and taught and passed down, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that is something that is not respected by the majority community, which is the white community. It's not respected. And I think that the trauma in those communities gets worse when it's invalidated. And that's what white America does, is invalidates it. No, that's not true. Just get a job.
Right.
Martin Luther King said it best. Telling a man to pull himself up by his bootstraps when you only have boots is a bigger insult, you know? And so that's what's really happening, in my opinion, in terms of mental health, is as a country, communities are experiencing group depression.
Yeah.
Group trauma, and then the larger community that's not experiencing that is invalidating it. And we all know, you guys much better than me because you're far more educated, but we know what happens when depression and trauma is invalidated. It only gets worse and deeper and has more effects.
Mm-hmm.
So can I jump in for a minute? So if we talk about the ripple effect, because you said, you know, the core group of people who experiences the trauma, but if we look at that and add the ripple effect, because as you said, white people understand what impacts them, how are they impacted by it? Because their mental health is clearly being affected by this paradigm as well. So can you talk about that a little bit?
And maybe I'm wrong. I just don't think that white people are having a mental health problem from this. I don't think, I just don't. Here's what, the system is designed to keep white America happy and healthy. That's how the system was designed. And so unless that system is challenged, unless white America is pulled out of that comfort zone, there is no generational trauma. Like let's talk about poor white America, because it makes it a little easier to transition the conversation. So let's talk about poor white America. Generational trauma exists in poverty, of course. But that cycle can be broke in one generation. In one generation, if I become wealthy, I've broken the cycle of generational trauma, and I no longer have to pass that trauma down to my children. Who is the worst at spending money? Poor folk. I'm telling you something. I grew up poor, and I was poor. Like, we were poor. My dad was on food stamps, like the coupons, the blue, yellow, green coupons, and telling me that Black America was on welfare. Like it's you know. But anyway, we were poor. We got one pair of shoes, and when you got off of school, you took that pair of shoes off and you went outside barefoot. We went outside barefoot, the stereotypical rednecks barefoot outside. And it wasn't because we were just rednecks, it's because I didn't have a second pair of shoes. You're not ruining your school shoes. You know, at the beginning of the school year, you got 5 pair of pants and 5 shirts. What you got. And by the end of the year, they got holes, they're dirty. You still had them, because we were poor. I grew up, and I've became successful in my life, and I do have a good income, and I do make good money. And the biggest struggle I've had the last 10 years is figuring out how to manage my money. Mm-hmm. I've been the worst money manager you've ever met. I'm getting now, finally, as I'm getting gray hairs, I'm getting better at it. But it's because I was poor. I didn't respect money. I never had it. You don't save money. There's nothing to save, you know? And so that to me is what I'm trying to teach my children, to save money, because that was the generational trauma to me. So is there generational trauma in a white community? Yes. Isolated pockets based on class experience.
Classism.
I think, okay, I'm sorry, Suze. So I think that I hear what you're saying, and I guess I want to take it out of the generational trauma, which you explained excellently in poverty. And it makes sense because money becomes your enemy when you're poor. And
Facts.
so, it's your enemy. And so you're fighting against it by not valuing it in the same way. So there is a challenge emotionally and in terms of like a mental health way. But even if we put it in the larger, less traumatized, impoverished community of whiteness, I find it hard to believe, and I think it's part of the dissonance, that they are not affected emotionally, not comparatively, but are not impacted emotionally by the turmoil happening in the center, which is the marginalized population. But I think the key is what you said, which is the dissonance, the dissonance.
Yeah, I do too. I think so too, because I think there is, to a degree, I have to agree that what you're saying, there is some mental impact, because it's happening and you have to willfully turn a blind eye, right?
Yeah.
So what we do, and this is just, listen, during the Jim Crow era, when people were being lynched in the streets, humans don't do that to other humans. So in order for that to be possible, you have to first dehumanize an entire group. So that is where these tropes come from. We had to convince white America that black men are just out raping white women. We have to convince them of that. We got to convince them that they're lazy, that they're criminals. You got to convince them that they're just inherently bad people, so that when one is lynched publicly in the streets and they're selling tickets to it, nothing's felt. You got children watching this, whatever. It's not a human. And so, to me, I've said this before, that programmed dehumanization of marginalized communities, especially Black communities, that's been passed down. Like, we're not that far separated from it.
Yeah.
Okay. And there's to right now, canvas white America, because they'll have these conversations when nobody else is around, and ask them about their grandmother that's currently in a home because she's going through dementia and she's saying things they never heard her say before. And it's just these racial, just disgusting things that my grandmother's never said that before. Yeah, she kept a lid on it, right? But this is really what she was. Your grandmother lived through that as a child. We're not that far separated from it. That we systematically dehumanized Black America. And until we systematically humanize Black America, that will continue. And I mean that. It's not over. White America as a collective, subconsciously, whatever you want to use, does not see Black America yet as humans. That's why I love, me personally, as soon as I heard the phrase Black Lives Matter, I said, oh my God, that's the one. I like that. I didn't even know it was going to be a nationwide movement. Nobody did, right? But when I heard Black Lives Matter, I was like, that's it. That's right. That's what I've been saying. Humanization of Black people has to happen. And that's true with other communities.
But what you're saying is also what gets appropriated and becomes performative to continue the taking the weight and the power out of it. Because Black Lives Matter, boom. So now Blue Lives Matter and health matters, and my hair matters. Like everything's matters now, and it's strategic. It's a strategic part of the system to make it an everyday thing, to homogenize it, and to make it, oh, everything matters. Just another way of saying all lives matter.
Yeah, because we turn human rights into political fight.
That's white people's response to Black Lives Matter.
Well, it's a systemic response,
yes.
Which is why things like, Juneteenth are given up. So now your life matters, and that's not nothing that Black people asked for. So that
Juneteenth is a holiday. Derek Chauvin gets 22 and a half years.
Right.
And they sit next to each other by weeks. Like,
well, the timing, strategic.
Yeah, exactly. And this is right next to each other by weeks. And that's correct. So we learned we had to systemically develop a way to dehumanize people, to treat them the way we treated them. And that is built into what America is. It's built into it. And we're not very far removed again from the Jim Crow era when these lynchings were occurring. And so Susie said, this programmed white American response is because we were taught how to dehumanize. We know how. My dad looked me dead in the eyes and said, black people are drug dealers, they're lazy, they don't want to get a job, and they live on welfare. Then a guy knocked on the front door. My dad sold him a bag of weed. He looked at me and told me, I work hard, I can't make enough money, that's why I sell these drugs. And then we went to the store and bought food on food stamps. Everything that he told me black America was, we were. But 200 years ago, rich white landowners told poor white people, listen, you're poor, but hey, at least you ain't black. And that was the message that was told to poor white people 200 years ago. What I need everybody to understand is that message exists now. It has made the test of time. It has survived everything. It was passed down. My dad believed it. We might be poor, but at least we ain't black. Because every stereotype he put on black people, he lived it, but at least he ain't black. But he didn't say that. It was just part of his fabric and part of his being. It's woven into the blanket of what is America. You said earlier, racism versus white supremacy. That is white supremacy. White supremacy is this blanket of protection around white America. And part of that blanket of protection is to dehumanize anybody who challenges it, because we've been taught that's the answer. We've been taught that's how you do it. How do you lynch people in the street? You dehumanize them. How do you make people slaves? You dehumanize them, right? And we do that. How do we keep kids in cages on the border? We first dehumanize them. We call them illegals. Once you take the word out, they're not humans anymore. They're illegals. They broke a law. No one in white America breaks laws every single day. So that's how you do it. That is the playbook. That's the game plan. And we've never stopped doing it. And that is literally a conversation that must be had on a super large scale. And we must attack that, because the system is not broken. It's working exactly the way it was intended.
Okay, 2 more questions.
Sure.
So white people are so afraid of critical race theory, which is basically teaching the real history of America. You do your own version of this daily. What is the hope for you on your platforms?
My hope, honestly, like I said, is to find those people that are on the fence, or those people that are not vocal, and those people who don't truly understand, but they want to understand. And my goal is to make them unapologetic, because unapologetic is the only way to do this. Everything, I can find every problem we have in history, and I can tie it directly to compromising with white America, right? The reason the Confederate flag is still flying is we compromised with white America. It needs to go away. Nazi Germany died, and Germany banned the swastika, and Germany banned Nazism, as they should. So we didn't. We compromised with white America. So my goal, honestly, is to create an army of unapologetic white people who just aren't going to have a safe space for people to operate in their own bigotry, quite frankly. And critical race theory ties into that, right? Until you understand, look, there was a video of a guy from Palm Beach County, Florida, raising hell at the school board because the school board had added an equity statement in their whatever you call it, their mission statement or whatever in the school book. So I noticed something, and I told my buddy this, and I never made a video on it. I meant to, and I should have, but my buddy said, "Oh my God, you're right, Russell. I didn't notice that. I noticed something that a lot of people didn't notice. All it said in there was equity." And then he went on a rant about how we're wanting to give black people things, and because they're black and brown, they get things that white people don't get. Like, nobody ever said that. You made that association in your own brain when you heard the word equity. And that's because deep down inside of who we are, deep down inside of white America, deep down inside, we know that equity favors us. And as soon as that guy got mad, he immediately said, "So you're saying you're going to give stuff to black people?" Wait a minute, there was literally no race mentioned. How'd you draw that conclusion? Because he had to shed his own cognitive dissonance to talk about it. So what really makes white America upset? A lot of people think, well, white America don't want to give up what they got. No, that's not true. They don't, because they don't believe it's real. They don't believe it's real. So they don't think they're giving anything up. What white America believes is that they're under attack. You're trying to blame them for it. White America doesn't want to be blamed for it. White America wants to be, white America wants you to do it this way. Listen, everybody gather around. Racism exists. Our ancestors are responsible for it. You guys didn't. You're all good. We love you. I want to give each one of you a hug individually, line up. And once we're done hugging, then we're going to come together and find a solution. That's what white America wants you to do. And that's compromise with white America. And compromise with white America has given us every problem we have in history. That is the crossroads that we're at.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much for today. And JD is going to take us home.
So you said something earlier that I wanted to kind of have you reflect on, which is, you know, there are things that got taken away, like the Black Panthers, and yet the KKK and expansions of it still exist. And that is about what in your mind?
It's about, so it goes back to dehumanization, but we see, so white America sees Black people as a threat, period. Just the Black skin is a threat, okay? And so anytime Black people collectively say, I've had enough, collectively forming a group, that's a threat to white America, because it's like, you know, Malcolm X said we should all, that the Black community should arm themselves. He didn't say attack white America. He never said that.
Right.
But what did white America say? He's trying to attack us. They're arming to attack us. That is your subconscious. That is your projection. Because white America, KKK was formed to attack Black America. So any formation on the other side of the fence must be the same projection to me, right? White America labeled Black America lazy because white America was actually lazy making slaves do all the work. White America labeled Black people violent when white America is the most violent in history, right? It's projection. We project on other groups who we are. Whereas inside of our own group, we handle it, you know, differently. Like I tell people all the time, I don't want to give up my white privilege. I just want it for everybody else. I don't want to change how, you know, leniency and sentencing for white people. I just want that same leniency and sentencing for everybody, right? So white America in a vacuum is making good decisions for white Americans. And like when I watch a police officer not kill a white guy who's clearly doing shit that would get him killed if he wasn't white, I say, good job, cop. Now just do that for non-white people. Like, that's why, because we're not going to treat the KKK like a threat, because that's our uncles, neighbors, brothers, sisters. We know who they are.
Yeah.
Right. The Black group, I don't know who they are. That's dangerous, you know, and that's the difference.
You know, and when the Black Panthers started to unify with other groups, that's when they became a real threat, because they had, you know, white people
infiltrated them. Who else has the FBI infiltrated that was a civil rights movement in this country? It blows my mind, right? that this happened publicly and well known, and it's not hidden. This isn't a conspiracy. It is well documented. But white America doesn't know that. They're kept from that information because, like clockwork, okay, it's Black History Month. Let's sit around. There was Martin Luther King, and he had a dream, and then the Civil Rights Act happened, and the dream came true. The end. Any other questions about racism? Like, that's how white America's taught, right? And in any other conversation, oh no, Malcolm X was a bad guy, wanted to kill white people. Listen to this one speech where he said, I want to kill white people. And then they used the words of Malcolm. Russell, you're a white liberal. Malcolm warned us about you. First of all, you're white. Malcolm didn't warn you about shit. Malcolm wasn't talking to you. Okay. Secondly, you know, you're talking about, in this case, you're talking about Malcolm X, but you don't even know about El Hajj Malik El Shabazz, right? You don't even know what that means. So, like, white America's quick to pick out the pieces of the puzzle that really sound good to them and throw the rest in the trash so they don't got to put it together. Critical race theory forces them to put it together.
That last one silenced me. That's perfect.
Yeah, it really is.
So this is clearly going to have to be 2 shows, because you have such a strong message and I don't want to have it edited out. So we're going to make this 2 shows.
I appreciate that.
It's important because you have the knowledge and you share it in a responsible way. You have the privilege and you share it in a responsible way. And I just really think that is so helpful, because, you know, we're exhausted. I tell Susie and anybody who listen, um, it's a rare day when I don't wake up in tears in my eyes, concerned about what I'm going to see. And being on the front line, doing the work that I've done, and feeling as passionate about being, one of the abolitionists in society, and really trying to actively do, sharing of information, but also trying to teach and running, culturally competent therapy, because we're both therapists, doing it in a way that's responsible, because there is no neutrality, and silence is violence. And if we don't start being activists in our work, then how do you do it in your private life? I don't understand. It's got to go together. So I just want to thank you so much for coming on today. And I have one more. Well, first of all, I want you to promise you'll come back.
You have to
coming back.
No matter how big you get, you'll come back.
I'll always come. I've enjoyed this. Actually, I've enjoyed the conversation thoroughly. And I very much, I can tell just by your questions and the way you guys present yourself, you have educated yourself in this topic, and that's who I much prefer to speak to, right? Like, I spent all day arguing with idiots on the internet. This was a breath of fresh air.
I don't know how you do it, and I read your threads. I don't know how you do it.
Well, I mean, you do it because you feel like you have to do it. That's
right. I do, honestly.
And you have family members, so it's in your life, and that's the thing and that's the same way Black people do it and people of color do it. We don't have a choice. We're trying not to be killed.
Yeah,
so it's ridiculous. That's serious.
Yeah, it's serious. I told my wife this too. I said, some of this stuff I could just like not reply to this guy, but I've put myself in this position on purpose, and it needs to be replied to. He needs this. I got to talk. It's got to be done. I got to educate, and I don't want to say that it's exhausting, because what you just that's exhaustion. Being a Black person in America trying to educate white America, oh my God. So thank you for even trying. But but I can only imagine why it exhausts you, because it is. I'm gonna tell you, and you didn't ask this question, but I'm gonna tell you this one little thing. What literally started, what lifted me into social media fame, or whatever the word we want to use, because I've been saying the same thing for a long time, and I've been on Facebook and social media for a long time. Last year, right after George Floyd got murdered and everything, I really got fed up, because I knew I called it. I said all these anti-racists are not going to be anti-racist 2 weeks, and I was right. And I started to argue with them, and I started arguing more. I used to just I'm not arguing with an idiot, and then I just started arguing more with people I never met. And I told my brother. Now my brother is mixed, Black and white. I told my brother, I said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to start making 1-minute videos. And this is what had nothing to do with TikTok. I just decided that 1 minute was the consumable format. I'm gonna start making 1-minute videos that answer these dumbass questions these people say over and over and over and over again. And I'm just gonna make a YouTube channel with just 1-minute videos. And then every time these idiots say something, I'm just gonna copy and paste the link. Here you go. There's the video. I'm not repeating myself anymore. And I made my very first video where I broke down the statistics of how I can prove to you that white America, or that Black America, is killed by the cops 2.87 times higher than white America. I made that video in front of my whiteboard, and I said, hey, there's this app, TikTok, where 1-minute videos exist. Let me just put it on there and see how the feedback's like. And in the first day, that video had 30 million views. So yeah. And I now obviously never expected that in 30 million years, but but it made me realize, hey, this is a good idea. Like, people, because the same people that were consuming that video were the same people that were also tired the way I was tired. I'm tired of saying the same shit over and over. So rather than say it over and over, let me just have a link. Here you go. And people tell me all the time in my DM, hey, I just seen your videos, my family now. And that is literally how I got started on the social media side of it. Because it is exhausting to say the same damn thing over and over and over and over and over.
I do trainings, and initially it was difficult to come up with prices, because truly they can never pay me enough for the exhaustion I experience going in and trying to teach something people do not want to learn. So I appreciate you acknowledging that. And you've already answered this, but we're going to ask you because it's the name of the show. What does changing the narrative mean to you?
So I like that question, because changing the narrative, number one, humanizing Black America. We've systematically dehumanized Black America, and we need to systematically undo that. Number two, and this is where a lot of people don't like my message, and that's okay. Number two, fix means to go back to a time when something was working. America was never working for anybody besides white America. And unfortunately, the only solution I see is to burn this system down and make a new one. And so to me, if we want to change the narrative, we got to throw white America away. I don't mean the people, I mean white supremacy. I mean the blanket of white supremacy that sits around white America. And until we do that, until we find it within ourselves as a country to literally throw the whole thing away, there comes a point where it's you got to throw it away. And so that's where we are. And so to me, if that doesn't happen, then unfortunately my children are going to be picking the fight up when I'm done.
Love it. You are awesome. Thank you for letting Susie stalk you. And
I did not feel stalked at all, by the way.
And get you on the show. Thank you for promising on in the recording that you will come back no matter how much you blow up. You
got it on record. I can't deny
it. Exactly, because
right.
It's too important for people to hear what you have to say. You speak the truth, and I love truth tellers. They're my favorite people. So
well,
again,
I appreciate you guys very much. Thanks for having me on.
For sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for stalking me, Susan.
You're welcome.